Those that are new, welcome. We cover 2 questions in this show. What is this thing, and how do I cook it? We start with the origins of the potato, discuss the production, trade, environmental and nutritional information of it, then diseases, health hazards, and best ways to acquire potatoes. We then go out to actually get the potatoes, come back home to the kitchen, and then we cook them up. Today we're doing 8 different recipes where the minimum requirement is heat and 1 tool. Anyways, origins. What is this? Potato? Never heard of it. It's some tuber root that's found around Peru near 10,000 BCE. There's thousands of kinds. Turns out you can eat it. We cultivated it small scale around the local area for a long time. Before the Columbian Exchange, the potato hadn't left the region in South America. It landed in Spain first, then brought to Eastern Asia by the Dutch, then India by the British or Portuguese, then Africa and the New World through colonization. All happening around 1550 to 1750. During this time, the potato still isn't being produced at the volume that it is today. It's still small scale. And in fact, many people were unsure whether potatoes were toxic or not. Then, in 1773, some French guy named Parmentier did a huge seminal examination of the characteristics of the potato. Around that time, the potato was also becoming high class in French circles, and Marie Antoinette reportedly wore a potato flower as part of her headdress. After the formation in the United States, potato cultivation ramped. Then, of course, famine in the 1800s, particularly in Ireland. Most of the cultivated potatoes at this time were of the same variety, and a disease known as blight affected a large majority of the DNA. Since then, cultivation and development of more varieties of potatoes has largely increased. Currently, the world produces around 830 billion pounds of potatoes a year, and you can find them just about everywhere. Many people attribute the potato to being the food product that most enabled the human population boom of the Industrial Revolution. Even Adam Smith wrote in The Wealth of Nations about the potato, "No other food can afford a more decisive proof of its nourishing quality or of its being peculiarly suitable to the health of the human condition." Currently, the potato is one of the most planted crops in the world. Nutritional information. The nutrition of the potato is pretty balanced. It's not many calories, but there's a lot packed in there. It's heavy in carbohydrates and fibers, but it also has decent protein. There's a little bit of natural sugars, and not so bad on vitamins. It's got 1/3 daily intake of vitamin C, some potassium and vitamin B6, small amounts of iron and calcium, and then it's lacking vitamin D. So it's not so bad. If you're looking to cut your carbohydrate intake, then perhaps have potatoes on a more rare basis, but all in all, it's not too bad for you. If you got a field and you plant some potatoes, all you really need is like a cow and maybe a chicken, and then you're set. But don't do that, because, it doesn't work to be so dependent on something that may turn. Diseases. Diseases in potatoes are prevalent, so watch out. Potatoes are just delicate, so if you see any discoloration or gross stuff, don't eat it. Also, potatoes are nightshades, so if that's something you're allergic to, also don't eat it. Something to think is, if someone served this to me, would I eat it? If the answer is yes, then go ahead and eat it. If no, throw it away. Research. A lot of people do research on potato disease too. North Dakota State University's Potato Extension has a great page on potato diseases. This is actually where I got pictures of diseases earlier, right here. The University of Minnesota also has a pretty good research faculty that looks into improving production techniques and optimizing potato varieties for cultivation. India also has a Central Potato Research Institute, which focuses on large-scale cultivation of potatoes. Then the Chinese Academy of Sciences researches the potato for the purposes of improving food security. And there's also third-party news sources like PotatoPro.com that does their own independent research. And of course, the International Potato Center is headquartered in Peru. Production. If there's one country that produces more potatoes than any other, it's China. They produce about 1/4 of all the world's potatoes. However, the Eastern European region, including Poland and Ukraine, produces the most. To my understanding, North American land is the most efficient, and per square foot it produces the most amount of potatoes. This may be due to technologies though, rather than land fertility. There's some being produced in northern Africa and some near Kilimanjaro and the Eastern Rift Mountains, and of course some being produced in South America near the Andes mountain range. One notable farmer of potatoes are the Simplot family. They're the supplier of potatoes to McDonald's. Trade. These are USDA data that says North America is both the largest importer and exporter of potatoes. But other than South America, basically no one has exported potatoes for the past 5 years, and the values of North America are far larger than any value of any other country in either table. So, take this with a grain of salt. But according to this, which also makes sense, is that there's not a lot of international trade of potatoes. Most regions cultivate and produce their own potatoes, and they sell them locally. The potato can be grown around the world. There's not really any need to trade internationally. Currently, there are no future options to trade potatoes. There once was in the Indian market, but no longer. Most production and distribution of trade is done by private corporation. Price. These are price data from Food and Agricultural Organization of the UN. There was a little bump in the price during the pandemic, but long-term effects have yet to be determined. It seems like COVID has affected the farmer's economic ability to farm, rather than having like a direct effect on the world prices. But this is the most recent projected food prices of all foods in the US for the year 2021. This is generally accepted as the cost breakdown of food products. As you can see, about 80% of the price you pay for food is for marketing. The actual value of most food products is only about 20% the retail price. Retail markets. After potatoes are grown, they're sold to distribution and packaging firms, which then resell the potato at a higher price to retailers like Walmart, Albertsons, and Kroger. You know, like normal grocery stores and places where you can buy food. They then raise the price again, and they sell it to you. Walmart is the world's largest food retailer, so you can probably get potatoes there. Waste. Don't waste your potatoes. Be a part of the Clean Plate Club. Potatoes make up approximately 20% of all food waste, and the FAO estimates around 2.9 trillion pounds of food a year get wasted. Millions of children under the age of 5 are affected by food insecurity, so the Clean Plate Club is for cool kids. Don't be one of those people that waste food. Food waste also puts tons of CO2 equivalent into the atmosphere every year. So clean your plate. Environmental assessment. In 2019, one guy wanted to look at the environmental impact of potato production. Turns out, the most carbon-intensive part of potatoes is when machinery is involved. This includes transportation and large-scale field preparation. Who would have thunk? But seriously, this is a good paper, and utilizes data to describe the problem. So, in short, if you want to reduce your carbon footprint, think about how many vehicles the potato sees before it sees you. The less the better. Acquiring wild potatoes. Okay, so now that we know everything there is to know about potatoes, how do we get them? Well, they grow in the wild. If you live anywhere in this region, you might actually be able to find some pretty easily. This is what some of them look like. If you don't live in these parts of Latin America, you still test your luck. Many of them may not be edible, but you are looking for neotropical realms that are somewhat moist and mountainous region. This is where you'll find native tubers in the ground. What you're looking for is this kind of Star Trek shaped plant with flowers coming out. See? Look at that. It's pretty similar. Of course, be careful when looking for these because they can look a lot like morning glory, which are poisonous. You probably don't even know which one of these is a potato. If you're unsure, dig up the roots and look at the bulbs. Ask the question, are these potatoes? If the answer is yes, then they probably are potatoes. A general rule in cooking is if you're unsure, the answer is always no. Buying from someone else. Most of the time you can buy potatoes in the store. You know, like Walmart and other grocery retailers. You can also buy them from the farm or your local farmer's market. This will have fresher and cheaper alternatives. Be sure to walk there or bike though to reduce your carbon footprint. Growing your own potatoes. Growing your own potatoes is easy. Essentially, you take a potato and you stick it in the ground. You know, when the potato starts growing these roots in your cabinet, when you buy a whole bag of potatoes and you never eat them for a long time, that's it growing. You want that, but just in the ground. They require little effort to plant, then in about 100 days or so, you should have about 10 times the amount of potatoes you planted in weight. The important thing is that they get the drainage, the space, and the warmth that they need. Potatoes are delicate, remember? They like to be all cozy in the ground with direct sun and minimal moisture and cold. When you plant them in direct sunlight, space them out about a foot apart from each other and don't water them for about 2 weeks. This is important because if they get really wet, it can cause disease. Wait about 2 weeks before you give them any water at all. Then once they start sprouting, give them a little extra soil near the base of the plant and it will let them grow bigger tubers. Tubers are potatoes. You'll start to see the plant flowering, and this is good, but still not time to harvest. Right around the time the flowers start to die and begin to wilt, then it's time to harvest. To harvest your potatoes, you just need to pull them out of the ground and cut the plants away from the potato. Those bulbous seed things that are in the ground coming out of the roots of the plant, those are potatoes. Check them for disease, then store in a cool, dry place. These bad boys are ready to eat. We go out to get potatoes. I don't have any potatoes growing in my backyard, and I'm not really in an area where foraging potatoes is practical. I do have a Safeway near my house, but we want to do things in the best way possible. I've got a farm near my house as well, and they do a farmer's market every week. This seemed like the best option, so I took my bike and I rode to the farm. I got there and had my mask with me, so I was ready to buy some potatoes. Beautiful day at the farm and potatoes are in season, so I got some tasty fresh potatoes from the local source. I recommend buying potatoes as close to the farm gate as possible. Just in general, the more people that touch your potato, the worse off you are. In taste, price, environmental impact, just about everything. I got home and I planted one of those potatoes that I bought because I didn't have any potatoes growing, and I think it's a good idea to do that. I literally just stuck it in the ground. I don't know if anything will come about from this, but potatoes are also seeds, so I think it's worth it to try. Next, time to head to the kitchen. Welcome to the kitchen. We are now back from getting our potatoes and we are ready to cook them up. First things first, and we've got to wash our hands. Then, we're going to examine our potato to make sure there's nothing that'd be harmful if swallowed. Most of the time, there won't be anything. I like to detach anything that is green in color, like these little eyes. If they're pretty consistent with the color of the potato in whole, I don't really worry about it. We're all good now, so let's start cooking. Quick potatoes in the microwave. First up is probably the easiest and fastest way to cook potatoes. We're going to cook this in the microwave. For this, you're going to need, at minimum, your potato, a puncturing device, I'm going to use this fork, and a microwave. Other things that will make it more enjoyable will be oil, seasoning, and a plate. So, what we're going to do is poke holes into the potato, like this. This allows for more consistent cooking throughout the inside of the potato. Holes are done. Next, I'm going to place it on a plate, and I'm going to throw it into the microwave for 4 minutes on high. 4 minutes is almost done, so when it is, I'm going to open it up and just smash it. Check for softness, and if there's any part that's too hard, put it back in the microwave for 1 to 2 minute intervals. I can drizzle it with some oil, salt, and pepper. That's it. Potatoes are looking good and it's ready to eat. Baked potatoes in the oven. This method is very similar to the microwave, but it takes a little longer. For this, you need the potato, a puncturing device, oil, seasoning, and an oven. Probably something to grab it out of the hot oven as well. We start by poking holes into the potato like how we did with the microwaved one. We are going to rub the skin with oil and season it with salt and pepper. Toss it into the oven at 425 degrees Fahrenheit and don't touch it. In about 30 minutes, check the potato to see how it's doing. You can do this by using your puncturing device and sticking it into the potato. You should easily be able to puncture all the way through with virtually no resistance. You can also check by puncturing the potato to the very center, then touching the tip of your utensil to see if it's warm. If you can't tell if your utensil is warm or not, it's not. You'll know if it's warm. Shoot for an internal temperature that satisfies the question. Would this heat kill bacteria in the very center of the potato? If yes, the potato's done. If you're measuring it, generally it's going to be around 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Smash it open and season it. This potato's ready to be eaten. Potato fries and oil. For fries, you need a heat source and a container to heat your hot oil. The container has to be big enough to submerge your fries, and you need a knife, some seasoning, a bowl, a way to grab the fries, and then your whole potato. A cutting board might also help. I suggest using German butter or russet potatoes for fries, but the process is the same. We're going to cut the potato long ways into equal parts, about a 1/4 inch tall, which is about 1/2 centimeter. Lay them out, then cut them lengthwise. You're good to go. You want to make sure your oil is hot, at least 350 degrees and not more than 450 degrees Fahrenheit. But also, you want your oil so that it's not increasing in temperature. I do this in my cast iron by turning on the stove on a medium-high heat until the oil is at a temperature where I would very much not want to touch it with my bare hand. I then turn it down to a medium-low heat and I gauge it from there. Once the oil is ready, make sure your potatoes are dry and have no residual water on them. Then put them in as much as you can without the oil overflowing. You want to do them all at the same time, ideally, to make sure that they're all in the heat at the same amount of time. Let them swim around in the oil a bit, make sure none of them stick together, and that the oil is touching all the parts of all the fries at all times. Give them some love and encouragement and tell them how thankful you are. Thank you, fries. I love you. You're gonna be so delicious. I've had these in oil now for about 4 minutes, and it's time to take them out. This is called blanching them, and I notice a difference in my fries when I blanch them versus when I don't. The idea is that we're going to cook them twice, so that this is the first time in the oil for about 4 minutes. Then we're going to put them on a little cooling tray till they're fully cooled. This will probably take another 3 minutes. You can tell they're blanched by the color and texture of the fries when you look at them. It should look like an uncooked fry that you reluctantly receive in a restaurant. It's a soft, saggy, and almost translucent looking fry. Once they're blanched and cooled, we toss them back into the same hot oil and cook for about another 4 minutes. You want the color to look a little something like this, golden, crispy. Immediately have your seasoning in your bowl ready nearby. I'm going to use salt and pepper because I like it. So as soon as these fries are ready, take them out of the oil and put them immediately into your bowl and toss them around with your seasoning. And that's fries. These fries are ready to be eaten. Mashed potatoes. Next up, mashed potatoes. For this, you need a pot, water, a mashing device, I'm just going to use this rubber spatula, your potato, and a way to boil the water, seasoning, and some dairy. I've only got butter right now, so that's what I'm going to use, but you can use milk or cheese too if that's what you've got. If you prefer mashed potatoes with no potato skin, then you need a way to peel the potato as well. So I'm personally going to peel my potato just so I can show you, and I'm going to start by doing that. Once it's peeled, I'm going to cut it up into small pieces just so that it cooks quicker. I put my pot of water on the stovetop with only enough water to fully submerge the potatoes so that it goes quicker as well. Salt your water so that it makes your potatoes tasty, then turn the burner on high heat. I place the lid on my pot so that it boils faster too. Once the water is boiling, place your potatoes into the water and cover the pot again. Depending on the size of the potatoes in the water, it may take a different amount of time. For me, this has been 5 or 6 minutes, and I'm checking the potatoes by grabbing a piece and testing how delicate it is when I smash it. If it crumbles with very little effort, you're ready to drain the water. Turn off your stovetop, add your dairy, and begin mashing. I've cut my butter into thin slices so that it melts quickly and becomes incorporated into the potatoes easily. Milk and cheese doesn't have to worry about this, but be careful about adding too much dairy. It's best to add little bit by little bit. If you're having trouble mashing all the pieces of potato, try something like this, angling the pot so that all the pieces fall into the same area. Once it gets all creamy and sexy, add your seasoning to taste and mix it well. Mashed potatoes, ready to eat. Potato chips. We're doing these in the oven, but you can also do them in oil. For this, you need your potato, a knife, a baking sheet, and parchment or foil, and your oven. I preheat my oven to 400 degrees, but you can do it at whatever temperature you want. The lower the temperature, the longer it's going to take. Anything above 450 is getting into the danger zone, so I wouldn't recommend doing it that hot. But a hotter oven is going to make chips with more char on the outside and more softness on the inside, while a lower temperature oven will have them more consistent throughout. We start by cutting the potato into these thin little discs, just like this. Once you've cut all of your potato, toss them in some oil and seasoning of your choice. Lay them out without layering them on the baking sheet and toss it in the oven. Check it for color about every 10 minutes. and once you see some colorization kind of like this, you know you're getting somewhere. Don't be afraid to rotate your potatoes or to remove individual chips if they're looking done before the others are. I'm going to just take it off the tray so the others can cook all the way through. Remember that when you open the oven, it's letting in cold air, so your chips may be cooking at different speeds unless you account for that. So, when your chips have a consistent brown color all the way through like this, you're done, and these potatoes are ready to eat. Hot or cold, these potatoes are going to be delicious. Seared potatoes. For this, we're going to cut the potato again, kind of like the chips. We need a knife, a potato, some tongs, oil, and a hot surface. I like to use fingerling potatoes for this, but this is all that they had at the farm, so I'm going to use this. I recommend peeling potatoes before this. The skin just doesn't really add anything to the flavor, and it chars kind of easily, so I just take it off. You've got your potatoes cut kind of like this into about 1/4 inch tall discs. We've got our hot oil in our pan at high temperature, and we place each disc flat onto the pan so that no disc is laying on top of another disc. Cook for about 4 minutes, or until the bottom gets golden brown like this color, and you can see on the side of the potato it getting cooked by the color differences like this. Once it's around halfway and the color on the underneath is just right, flip the potato to its other side. Cook for about 4 minutes until the other side is also golden in color, and add oil to the pan if you're getting more of a burnt color than a seared color. Once this golden brown is on both sides, your potatoes are done and they're ready to eat. Enjoy. Hash browns. I love hash browns. For this, we need a cheese grater, a bowl, water, oil, seasoning, a flat top grill, a spatula, and a potato. What we're going to do is grate this potato on the cheese grater like this. Feel free to use another potato to push the end of your first potato into the grater. Does the trick. These guys go directly into a bowl of water, which rinses the potato and gets excess starch off. Drain the water, then mix the hash browns with oil and seasoning. Your flat top should be preheated to around 350. You can also do around 300, but lower kind of the better. Then you lay down the hash browns flat on the grill without having too much layered on top of each other. It's not a big deal, but just try your best. Give it about 5 minutes or until there is a crisp and char on the bottom parts of the potatoes that are touching the flat top. You should be able to easily pick them up and flip the potatoes with your spatula. If they are sticking to the grill and you can't get underneath them, let them sit longer. Flip them, then repeat this process. Hash browns should take around 10 to 15 minutes, but for me, for some reason, they seem to take longer than I always want them to. So be patient and they'll be tasty. Once they're looking like this, they're ready to be taken off and served. Enjoy. Your hash browns are done. Fire. I'd like to teach a primitive method of cooking potatoes as well. Basically, we need a fire and mud, and we're going to toss the potatoes directly into the fire. It's going to be really delicate when it's done, so be sure you have a way to grab the potato without squeezing it too hard as well. Make your fire and get it stable. Cover the potato with mud and place it in the fire. We cover it with mud so that the outside of the potato doesn't char and get burnt by a direct flame. It also adds a little earthy flavor, so I think it's nice. Leave it in there for about 40 minutes to an hour. It's hard to check the potato when it's directly in the fire, so you have to learn timing just from trial and error. Once it's done, take it out and let it rest until you are able to touch it with your hand. It'll still be cooking on the inside even after it's out of the flame, so if the outside is cold, the inside still may be hot. When you can bear rubbing the mud off of the potato, do it. Then put it on a plate and smash it. It's ready to be eaten. Pro tips. So I'd like to go over just some pro tips when cooking potatoes. Number 1, if you cut a potato and you're not looking to cook it right away, it's good practice to always keep it submerged in water. This helps make it less starchy and it keeps it from oxidizing. If you leave it out for too long, you'll start getting this inedible green color from the oxygen. 2, if you want to dice potatoes for whatever reason, cut it like this. First, cut it long ways like we did for fries, then lengthwise like how we also did for fries, but then you rotate it and give it a cross cut just to make them into little squares. You just want to make sure everything is equal size. Generally, in cooking, the smaller cuts, the more fancy it is. Number 3, what's important in cooking is consistency. It's all about your averages, and your most average piece is your indicator piece. Try to avoid any outliers that are either a lot bigger or a lot smaller than your average piece. This is because different sizes cook at different speeds, so you always want your pieces to be the same size no matter how big or small and no matter what you're cooking. 4. If you only have minimal resources, I'd say the best tool for potatoes would be one of these paring knives. It will do whatever you need it to. What goes well with potatoes? We can pair potatoes with a lot of things. I've laid out some things here that go really well with potatoes. We've got some dairy, some milk, cheese, butter. We have oil and different seasonings including salt, pepper, celery salt, and garam masala, for example. Garlic is also really great with potatoes. Onions can be good, including green onions or caramelized yellow onions. And tomatoes aren't so bad either. Herbs can also be really good. We've got some sage, parsley, and thyme. Beer and bacon, of course, go really well with potatoes. I'd suggest an ale or dark lager to go best with it. Most sauces also really go well with potatoes. Beef gravy or hollandaise are, in particular, some of my favorite. What do potatoes go well with? Well, if potatoes aren't your main course and you want to use them as a supplement for other food, we've got that as well. These are some things that potatoes go really well with. Of course, we've got some meat in the form of pork, beef, and poultry. Green beans, corn, squash, and other thick, hearty vegetables, including kale, are also great pairs with potatoes. Example. For my example plate, I try to keep it under $10. So I made some fresh mashed potatoes to go alongside my seared chicken and buttered vegetables.